In this video, I'm going to talk about my price prediction for Bitcoin. I'm going to talk about my short-term and my long-term price prediction. So if you've watched any of my videos before, you'll know that one of the main ways that I trade is with the launch signal that I created. Now with the launch signal, there are real launch signals, which are the green ones here, and there are failed launch signals, which I've highlighted red here. And you can see just recently, a few days ago, we got another failed launch signal. So this is the basis for my price prediction in the short term. So in the short term, you can look back at the previous failed launch signals and you can see what happened during those times. There are 5 previous failed launch signals in the last 7 years. You can see basically what happened after each one. So to get a price forecast for the short term, I'm going to be looking at these 5 failed signals and what happened after that failed signal. So I'm just going to copy the chart pattern after each one and I'm going to overlay it onto the current price. So based on the previous 5 failed launch signals, this is roughly what we can be expecting from price at this time, given that we've just had another failed launch signal. I've got 3 overlays of the price here. This is exactly what happened in the previous times we got a failed launch signal, which was these times here. There were 2 periods here where we got multiple signals kind of back to back, multiple failed launch signals back to back. For these times, I'm just going to take one example of the price action that followed. You can see here I've got 3 examples of the price action that failed: yellow, orange, and red. And you can see what's common about all these 3 scenarios is basically they all go down, and they go down by quite a lot. Now, in actually 2 of the scenarios, they do actually go up a fair bit higher before they go down. And also this red one, this was the COVID crash, so we can't really expect something like this unless we get another black swan scenario, like what happened in March 2020. So I'll just look at these one at a time. So of the 3 possible scenarios we can expect in the short term for the Bitcoin price, this is one of them. And basically it's just retesting the lows and it just goes straight down. This is the second example of what we can expect in the short term. You'll see this one is so far actually matching the current price action fairly well. So it starts with a drop and then it just bounces around a little bit. It actually gets another failed launch signal and before crashing back down. This is probably the one that I'm expecting the most. And this is the third scenario that we could see in the short term. This is based on, again, the previous failed launch signals. This was the COVID crash though, so probably we won't go this far down. You'll see in this one, we did actually keep going a fair bit higher. So if we followed this pattern here, we'd reach around about 55,000 before crashing back down. Now again, I'm not expecting to go this low because this was the COVID crash in 2020. So unless there's another black swan scenario, the crash down probably wouldn't go this deep. But into the 30,000s, even the low 30,000s is definitely on the table. So those are basically my 3 scenarios for the price action in the short term. So basically the direction is down, but it could chop around a bit first and it could go a little bit higher before the eventual crash down. That is my short-term prediction for the Bitcoin price. Now again, looking at the launch signal and the failed launch signals over the last 7 years, we can actually get an idea of a long-term prediction for the Bitcoin price. So basically what happened 1 to 2 years after a failed launch signal? Can we look at that and what does that look like in terms of the price action? So again, we can copy the price action from these periods and we can overlay it onto the current price to get a longer term prediction. So this is what the first example looks like. This is taking the price action from this first failed launch signal here. Now, similar to the failed launch signal that we've got at the moment, this failed launch signal came after multiple years of no failed launch signals. And that's kind of what we're looking at here. Back in 2017, we had 2 proper launch signals, and then there was about 2.5 to 3 years before we got the next failed launch signal. And we're looking at something similar right now. So it's been almost 2 years since the actual launch signal, and now we've got another failed launch signal. So in terms of timing, the price action that we can expect in the longer term is probably going to be more similar to this first failed launch signal here. So this is how the price action played out from that point. So that is one possible long-term prediction for the Bitcoin price. Again, I'm not saying I'm expecting this, but basically what I am expecting from a failed launch signal is for price to go down and then for another proper launch signal to not come for months, possibly another year or 2. And without another proper launch signal, we aren't going to see a big move like this. So we're looking at least probably 4 months up to a year or longer until we see another major move like this. Now I'll just take another overlay of price from this failed launch signal and we'll see what that looks like mapped onto the current price action. So you can see if we map this price action onto the current failed launch signal, then it would look something like this. This one actually looks a bit more believable than the previous one, but I think this high would be a bit too high. Maybe somewhere in kind of just over 100,000 would be more believable for me. But this sort of price action is more believable over the next 1 year. So the other possible long-term scenario is basically that the next major peak will be multiple years away. Basically taking the price action from this first failed launch signal here and mapping it until the second major peak from a launch signal, which was up here. And what does that look like in terms of mapping it onto the price action today? So if we map that onto today's price, it would look something like this. So again, a crash down in the short term, followed by another major capitulation and 2 launch signals over the next couple of years. This is also fairly believable. I don't think the crash down will actually get this low, but in terms of a major peak, around about 150,000, which is the peak up here, is actually fairly believable to me. So those are my short-term and my long-term predictions for the Bitcoin price. Again, in the short term, we're looking at most likely a bit of chopping around before going back into the 30,000s. This is based on the 5 previous failed launch signals that all basically did the same thing. They were all major bull traps. And in terms of the longer term price action, there will most likely be more proper launch signals to come, possibly in the next year to as early as 4 months from now. And that is when we'll eventually see another major move. So basically in the short term, be very cautious because the price is most likely going lower, and in the longer term, basically just wait for the launch signal to come and you'll be doing very well. That is my plan. That is my personal investing plan, is to wait for these launch signals to come. I do smaller trades in the meanwhile while I'm waiting for these major launch signals to come, and I'll talk about that in the following videos. If you like this content, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll keep you updated on this launch signal.